Hello, interwebs. It is I, Hewlett, David Hewlett, with a heart-pounding email of awesomeness for you today. What I want to do is give you an audio version of the email of awesomeness that I send out every week. I know there's a lot of words there. I know because I write them, and there's not always time to sit down and do a proper reading deep dive on these things. So I thought, why not give you an audio-only version as well? And then I was like, well, audio only. I mean, maybe there's some pictures you're interested in, or maybe there's some links you can see, or I don't know. So I thought I would put it in video format, and you can listen to it where you and how you'd like. So the heart-pounding email of awesomeness, and it starts with the Lord Chunky, our Robo-Macguyver. Lord Chunky is one of the earlier tech bandits that I recruited to the cause, and he came to the house one day and announced that he didn't believe we could build a gaming PC. So I brought him down, and Baz and he played with this PC that I was building and managed to get it working where I couldn't. Turns out there was a loose cable, and they were goofing around with a fan, and they managed to tap this cable, and it all came to life. And I don't know, that struck a chord certainly for Lord Chunky, and he's now become my PC guru. Like, he's like, if I need to know anything about PC technology, 3D printing at this point now, and now of course robotics, and I'm just so excited. So I went and saw him compete at this first robotics contest at the Robots at the CNE, Robots at the Canadian National Exhibition, and it's one of these off-season events, but really fun the whole weekend. And there's just a bunch of kids building robots and fixing robots and breaking robots and solving problems, and it's just extraordinary. And his team not only made the finals, they did it by MacGyvering together zip ties and plastic plates to get around the fact that their drive shaft kept shearing. Like, the power of this robot was so much that it twisted and snapped this drive shaft. And in order to rebuild it, they had to sort of kludge together these parts. And I just thought that was literally engineering awesomeness at its best. I had no idea how this worked, and I was lucky enough to have Lord Chunky join us on our live stream. If you want to check that out on YouTube, he dropped by to let us know about how his first robotics adventures went. What I found out, which was a little alarming, was that there is this one teacher who spearheaded this, and in order for there to be a robotics club of this sort in the school, there has to be a teacher at every single event and practice and build, and there needs to be a teacher there all the time. I guess there's legal reasons or whatever. He's left the school, so Lord Chunky's not sure there's going to be a robotics club this year. So I said, well, wait a second. That is where Tech Bandits has to step in. And I started joking about doing like a Welcome to Wrexham, that wonderful show about the football club, and Hollywood types swooping in to buy a club. I thought, how funny would it be if this old scientist has been could start a Tech Bandits robotics club and have Lord Chunky run it for him. I just think it'd be just really fun to support something like that if it's not possible at the school. If it's possible at the school, if there's a teacher there, fantastic. They should obviously stick with the school. But if they can't, I've offered to throw Tech Bandits into the fray, and I thought that could be kind of fun thing to actually document too. But some kind of a Tech Bandits robotics club would be kind of cool. I think it's sad though that it's only available to kids if there are teachers willing to give up all of their free time to do it. I think it's a bit mad, it sounds. Anyways, but fantastic thing. I don't know if you know First Robotics at all. It was started by Dean Kamen, I believe, the guy who invented the Segway, which was originally a wheelchair, which was a sit up and beg wheelchair. So it went from a four-wheel wheelchair to sit up so that people could access countertops and talk to people eye to eye and stuff like that. Amazing invention. And he wanted to turn scientists into rock stars, and he thought, what a great way to do it through robotics and get kids excited about competition and turn it into like a real sports event, but with robots. So of course I'm completely sucked in on that. Another Tech Bandits, not to be outdone, Vipup walked over 46K this last 4 days playing Pokemon Go. I have to mention this because I remember when Pokemon Go first came out, and I was amazed at how all of a sudden Baz wanted to leave the house. So we were constantly out for these endless walks as he went and caught Pokemon, and so Vipup has refound this. You know what I mean? He's rediscovered Pokemon Go and is now doing these crazy long walks and capturing 9 shinies in 4 days. And he's suggesting that everyone does the same thing. He's sort of quite taken with the fact that it gets him out and gets him discovering the world around him. Crazy that a video game could actually do that. How cool is that? Tardigrade Fan Club is next up. Tardigrades, I'm in love with these things. So it turns out that both Lance, Gimpy G, and myself both stumbled upon this YouTube video. Well, I stumbled. He glid. Or glided. I guess you can't glid, can you? He glided into it professionally on his wheels. But this is it's called Journey to the Microcosm, and it's just extraordinary. The amount of information and the footage they have on these tardigrades is just mind blowing, and I welcome everyone to check this out because it's a love letter to these fantastic microscopic little beasties. Some of the things I learned, I'd always thought of these things as extremophiles. Like I thought they just flourished in these crazy, insanely hot or cold environments and space and vacuums and all stuff. Apparently, that's just not the case. They just happen to be very good at it. They want to be comfortable like us, but they just happen to be very good at surviving in these extreme things. So it's not like they seek out these extreme locations. It's just that they happen to survive there as well. We've been finding them in the layer of water around moss, and apparently it works with other plants as well. But for us, we've just been finding little patches of moss, usually around some kind of a stony environment, like stones and moss, and you pull off a little bit of this moss and hydrate it, and eventually you find usually at least a couple of these fabulous little moss piglets swimming around. One of the things that we saw when we were looking at these through the microscope the other day was we saw these what looked like the most adorably or dorkably cute little black eyes that they had. But I was like, they can't possibly have eyes. Like it's too small. They're just slightly bigger than microscopic, I guess, and microscopic in most cases. So how could they possibly have eyes? Well, it turns out they do have eyes. They just happen to be these single photosensitive cells on either side of their heads. So it's like a single cell for seeing. Those are single cell eyes, which is just not only insanely cool, it's ridiculously cute as well. So Lance and I are completely fascinated by these things, and we're coming up with all sorts of evil plans where we can somehow integrate tardigrades better into the whole Tech Bandits our Tech Bandits online adventures. So it turns out that tardigrades are closely related to absolutely nothing. God, how great would that be? I wouldn't have any sisters. No, I love them. So they have 8 legs. They're classified in a specific clade, which I'm going to say wrong, Tactopoda. And then there's another clade in this group, I guess, in this classification, called the Urathropoda. Again, probably butchering it. And so on one side, tardigrades. On the other, every single like arachnid, insect, bug, crustacean, trilobite, just like everything, like a sea of different beings on one side of this tree. On the other, it's just tardigrades. There's literally nothing related to them, which is just extraordinary to me. It just makes them even more cool in my opinion. And so tardigrades are not immortal. This is fallacy that they can somehow live forever. But as an example, there was an 120-year-old museum specimen, which they hydrated, and it revived tardigrades from cryptobiosis. So they were 120-year-old tardigrades that had curled up into these things called tons, which is just like a little ball, where their metabolism gets down to less than 0.01% of normal. So they're for all extensive purposes like dead, but they're not. And how do they do this? Well, these little micro zombies, can dry out into this ball, this little tons, and then be rehydrated. And they do this by using, by synthesizing a glass-like protective sugar, and this stuff called trehalose, which I'm probably butchering. It replaces the water in these tiny tardigrade cells, and it just stops their important parts from getting damaged during the great parch this cryptobiosis sort of puts them through. So they're not immortal; they're just naturally awesome. And there was some questions about people were asking about what microscopes we've been using for that, and one of them was this. My friend Andrews was this very cool old like Soviet era binocular dissecting microscope, and he says he may have another one kicking around, so I'm hoping to get my hands on one of those myself. And the other one was this little Dipple microscope kit, which allows you to use your iPhone or iPad. I shouldn't say iPhone; it's any camera phone basically. And it's just a neat little system. I'm not affiliated with them. I'm not, I'm just a fan. They're fiddly as all hell. They drive me a bit crazy because it's very hard to get what you want in frame and stuff. But once you get it, man, the footage is crazy great. And I've got some links to that in the email as well. Next up, we're on to Tattoo Me. Ugh, what a grim looking picture. So I've never been a fan of tattoos. The fear. I don't just play a coward on television. The idea of pain for art is just not. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. I don't want the horror of jabbing me with ink and stuff. Just sounds horrendous to me. I know Jason Momoa is all into that, but I can't do it. I'm far too much of a coward for that. But I did find a tattoo that I might consider, and that was this. That was a series of gold nanodots that have been tattooed to the surface of a living mouse brain cell. How's that for some detailed tattoo work? And why on earth would you do this other than just the sheer bling factor? It's because, well, this is these nanopunks over at Johns Hopkins University. They developed a proof of concept, and the idea is they wanted to create a non-toxic, high-resolution, lithographic method of attaching nanomaterials to living cells. And there's a lot to unpack there, so I will go back. We've been able to make electronics very, very small. Very, very small. We've got them in computers. We've got them in phones. We're getting so good at, we can put them on curved surfaces. We can do all these amazing things, but they generally involve high temperatures, extreme pressure, and toxic chemical, like nothing that life is going to survive in. So the idea that they've been able to tattoo this stuff onto a cell is kind of extraordinary. And there is a rather long and detailed description of how they do it, which I will spare you here. You don't want that in your ears. But the basic premise comes down to this very simple old, like 1700s technology called lithography, which was originally designed to create copies of sheet music. And it's just you've done it I'm sure you've done it as kids and stuff, where you scratch away the wax or the grease, and wherever there isn't the grease, you have the ink can penetrate that part of the artwork, and you could get these very detailed reproductions of these things. So they've used a version of that along with a couple of really cool technologies. So they've used it's called nano imprint lithography, and they've used a combination of inkjet printing, so they can print this very fine layer of a single layer of like gold nanodots. They use a microscopic mold. So literally they're forcing these shapes into little microscopic molds, and then they're hardening them with UV light. And it is just, the process is incredibly fiddly. But it allows them to put these cells, these gold nanodots onto living cells, which is just, which will allow things like, antenna or sensors, integrated circuits, all sorts of these sort of circuits inside living organisms, which could allow for hybrid materials and bionic devices, biosensors, like real Blade Runner stuff. So the fact that they've been able to prove that this could be done by integrating this gold, which is a very good conductor, onto this biomaterial, they are that much closer to making these things possible within the body, which is, for someone like me, is just kind of a cool Blade Runner thing to know. And it doesn't just stop there, because I think, just to give you a sense of the size of this stuff, I went to the University of Utah's GSLC, and they have this genetic cell size and scale visualizer, which is this just wonderful interactive image that allows you to just keep tunneling in on things to see, what the numbers mean. And so what I found out by looking at this stuff is that these nanoparticles are basically the size of a virus. And I know viruses range in size hugely, but just to give you an idea of just how small these things are, the visualizer is just great for that. It's just kind of, because I struggle with the massive numbers in these and the massively small numbers, and it's just nice to have a way of visualizing it, and they've done a great job of that. But this brought up a bunch of other things, like gold is being used in a lot of stuff right now. And if you can make it small enough, it can get into all sorts of nooks and crannies in the body. And so what they've done is they've started using it for cancer treatment. And the gold is combined with just the right biomaterial that it will bond to these specific cancer cells that they're looking to eradicate. They then wheel up the big James Bond laser, fire it up, tuned to the gold. It hits the gold, heats it up, vaporizes all of those hideous cancer cells. So it's just a really cool way of getting a very specific, very targeted killing of the cells that you want dead when it comes to cancer. Because unfortunately, in the past, different sort of chemo and radiation treatment and that such is basically about trying to kill off the cancer cells, but it also tends to kill off the healthy cells as well. This way you can actually, it's like a little deadly gold assassin that goes in there and latches onto the things you want destroyed and allows you to destroy it. So, and then if we're talking about bioprinting, this came up as well, which I just thought was crazy cool. This is these, as I call them, the Harvard heart-loving nerds, who used a newfangled type of hydrogel ink, which was infused with these gelatin fibers to print, 3D print, a human heart muscle. But not only that, they didn't just print it, it actually beats as well. So they've 3D printed a beating heart muscle, which of course has amazing potential, and is just a really neat thing to watch. So that I've included a video of that in motion as well. And finally, I will leave you with Space Waz. And in the last email of awesomeness, I was pondering, our questionable choice to just start polluting space, where basically we've got so much trash orbiting our planet already that it's becoming difficult for us to get off the planet. And not only that, we're crashing landers on the moon. We're crashing into, all these, every planet we can crash something into. We seem to do that. And I started thinking, are we going the same way as our planet? I mean, we've got this whole global warming thing going on now. I mean, we've got a crisis because we've just ignored all the crap we've poured into the oceans and into the air and all this kind of stuff. Are we doing the same thing on other planets? Are we not learning from our mistakes here? Anyways, so in looking into this, I was listening to the NVIDIA AI podcast, which is really cool. I mean, it's very pro AI, obviously, because NVIDIA supplies a lot of the chips that runs this AI stuff. And they were talking to Alex Fielding, who's the co-founder and CEO of this Privateer Space. And he's working with Steve the Wozniak on this new space debris mitigation company. So they're looking to make money in the space garbage business, and so their genius plan is to create a way of monitoring as well as cleaning up this stuff. So they're saying that the first stage they need to work on is creating a system where everyone can see what's out there, and not only that, they can share what they've put out there, so that we get the lines of communication going between different companies and stuff, because companies don't know what other companies are doing. Not every country is willing to let you know that they've put something else up into space. There's a lot of secrecy around this stuff. So their idea with this Privateer Space is to create sort of valuable real-time resources that are available to everyone from their site, and opening up communications between all of Earth's space community. That's their process. I just love the idea that I'm thinking, is there a way to create a giant net that can grab stuff? And they've actually played with that as well. I'm not sure if these guys have, but certainly someone who's playing with that idea, that concept of grabbing things. But I just thought, once again, in a fabulous, engineering process, they've narrowed it down to, yes, we there's physical things we need to do to remove this garbage. But more importantly, we need to create a system where people can share information about it and to learn about it and come up with solutions on their own, given all the information that they're given. So I'm very excited about. I'm generally excited about anything that Woz is involved in, that Wozniak is involved in, because he's just such a dynamic, interesting nerd of a guy. So that's it. That is my first email of awesomeness in audio version. Please do tell your friends and family if you enjoy this. I would love to have some more people subscribed, and I will start including this in the email version as well, so you can listen along, and if you need to look something up, you'll have the email as well. So thank you very much, and I will say, be safe, be kind, be brilliant, and until we geek again, cheerio.